Hello and welcome to the first ever Board Crazy video review. We are, of course, doing Architects of the West Kingdom this week. I am D. I am joined, as ever, by my cohorts Graham and Will. Say hi, boys.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, we don't get to say our own names?
No. I've given you the opportunity several times, and you've usually messed it up. So I'm just keeping it simple this time, you know?
That's fair enough.
So before we get started with our thoughts, we're going to kick it over to my explanation of the game from our gameplay video. If you want to check out that, there should be a link to that below. If you want to skip that and just get right to our review bit, there's going to be a little timestamp on the video you can click on. So take it away, D. Architects of the West Kingdom is a game for 1 to 5 players, designed by Shem, Phillips and S.J. Macdonald, and published by Renegade Game Studios and Garphill Games. Like its predecessor, Raiders of the North Sea, Architects is a worker placement game. However, this game has a focus on construction rather than destruction. Each player starts the game with the 20 workers of their color and 3 building cards, which they can work towards constructing. On a player's turn, they simply place one of their workers on one of the available spaces. Each space provides one or more options that may be performed. These things include gathering resources, hiring apprentices, or actually constructing one of the cards from your hand. An important factor in Architects, which is tracked throughout the game, is each player's virtue. Players can gain virtue by doing things like donating to the king or hiring certain apprentices, but virtue can also be lost by doing things like going to the black market or having too many people imprisoned. Having high virtue at the end of the game will earn players victory points and can also help them get rid of some of their debts, while having low virtue will cost them victory points, but can also help them with things like skimping on their taxes. In addition to what's gained or lost from virtue, players will earn additional victory points at the end of the game from all buildings they've completed, as well as unspent resources and work they've done on the Cathedral, which is a communal building that all players may work on as they choose. The player who ends the game, of course, with the most will be the winner. Wow, that was a pretty great explanation, guys. I don't know what you think, but I think I nailed it.
Yeah, your voice was a little not so
sexy?
great.
All right, fine.
Raspy.
Say what you will. Say what you will.
Have you finally quit smoking?
It's not for a Rod Stewart thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about first, Will?
So the first thing that stood out to me in this game is, given that this is I guess you could say a middleweight game. It's definitely not a light game.
Not featherweight?
No, definitely not featherweight. Definitely
Bantamweight?
Are we gonna do this?
Yep. No.
Go through all of them.
It's not a light heavyweight even, but a middleweight.
It's a middleweight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
I don't know. Let's not do these
Wilson.
fighting references. Point is that it's surprisingly easy to learn. I looked at the rule book, and when
this rule book?
when I first saw that it was like
800 pages?
like it's a lot of
It's
pages.
not the shortest rule. It's very thorough.
Yeah, like the reason it's so long is that they take a lot of time to explain everything almost needlessly excessively.
No, I wouldn't say needlessly. Like they need to be. There's so many locations on the board. You need to understand
But there's
exactly how they all work.
Plenty of pictures too. Like that's what take up a lot of room, making it longer.
Oh, sure.
Point is,
there's always gonna be pictures.
is that if this is not your first rodeo with a worker placement game especially, you'll be able to pick this one up in, I would say, 15 to 20 minutes. Simply because,
Well,
I mean, a lot of these things are so intuitive.
this might take about half an hour to read, but yeah.
Go to the forest, get a wood. Go to the forest again, get a second wood. You know, same thing with quarry
2
mines.
woods, you mean.
There are some, obviously, that you're going to need to learn, like the workshop and the black market, but ultimately, I think one of this game's greatest strengths, at least initially, is how easy it is to learn.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think so. I think we understood. The only thing we had trouble with is the town center, understanding exactly how that works, but I think we got it. Now, speaking of the town center, while we took maybe some time to have to learn how it works, once we learned how it works, I think it ended up being maybe the most interesting part of the game.
Yeah.
The capture mechanic.
Definitely, the capture absolutely helps balance the game out. It kind of takes it away from your traditional Euro-style game because now you're...
It makes it more competitive,
Yeah.
like interaction between players and whatnot. I mean, it's almost it can almost be a play style of its own, just like focusing on
trying to hurt people,
just
then
messing with people and collecting resources by throwing them in prison.
And I wouldn't be surprised if it's thrown in there because in this game it's a little bit unusual how there's no limit to who can go to what resource spots.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which we can get into that more, but that in itself in typical Euro style games is how you affect another player. Is you take their spot or something like this. And this, the only way to affect another player is really by using the town center.
Or you
which,
think about like
I said, it helps balance out. It's a unique way to balance out the game rather than your traditional Euro style game.
compared to like
which I personally liked it. I thought it was effective in that.
Yeah, compared to Raiders of the North Sea, which is same developer, similar sort of game as this. That usually most spaces there's only one place for any worker to go.
Yeah,
and then it has to be traded out. You have to think about where you're going to go. You can't. You don't really have an option to hoard like you could in this game. So yeah, this mechanic is really necessary to keep things reasonable, even because.
Yeah, like in our gameplay video, you see that 2 times it happened to me where I was set up here to get 2 pieces of gold on my next turn, and both of you used the capture mechanic, which really set me back, and ultimately the game ended up being super close. But if you guys hadn't done that, I have no doubt that I probably would have
won. Yeah,
taken the victory by a couple points.
I beat you by a point,
there.
right?
Yeah, by a point.
So, yeah, that would have been.
So
on the flip side of that, though, going to the town center, yes, you get to affect the other players, but you're also affecting yourself. Because if you think about it, you're taking, in a sense, 2 turns away from yourself every time you go there. Because when you go there, that's 1 turn. You move them back to your board. That's another. Well, that's not another turn. That's within that first turn.
Same turn, yeah.
But like eventually, you're going to want to use a turn, most likely, to go to the guardhouse to get coins for them, and to do that, that's another turn. So if you think about it, those are 2 turns that you're losing that you could otherwise dedicate to getting resources, building houses, working on the cathedral, or just moving towards getting the victory points that you need to.
True, but
to
it
win.
is probably the best way to quickly collect silver in this game.
Yeah.
You go to the tax stamp, you're gonna lose
virtue.
virtue, yeah.
You go to the silversmith, you get you'll get some. Yours can capture there. When you go to the town center, you can collect 10, 11, 12 at a time, and just boom in bulk in 2 turns get a ton of coin. So.
I think and maybe I'm wrong, I think in every single game I've played, every person has used the town center at least once too.
Oh, definitely.
So
No,
is really, I don't think there's really any way.
It's also just too much fun to avoid it.
Yeah.
It's too much fun. Also, like, it's that inevitable, there's going to be that inevitable moment where someone takes, like, 5 of your guys from the forest, and you're like, oh, you SOB.
Well, I mean, yeah.
And you're like, you're gonna do the same thing to them.
You can't let someone just get to a point where they've got like a monopoly over a single resource. It's just too risky. So I mean, you see someone has like 6 workers on the same place. You're like,
it's easy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Your target.
And I have to say, it's miserable when you're sitting there and someone has an army of your guys like on their board.
Who would do that?
That happened to me at one point. You had like 15 of my workers on your board.
I had like 11.
You could have paid to get them back.
I could, but it's a king's ransom to get them back.
5 coin or
a debt, and you lose
a loss of
virtue. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot in this game.
Yeah.
Anything else mechanic-wise you guys are particularly fond of or not fond of?
Virtue track.
What about it, Will?
That's clearly the.
I mean, everyone's been raving about the virtue track.
I think it's really good.
I've seen videos from game designers, game reviewers. People just love this virtue track, and I think it's because of that same reason that that you get to play with multiple play styles.
Yeah.
The idea being that you can be evil, and the more evil you get, the fewer taxes you have to pay.
It's almost a role-playing type feel to it. Like if you are more virtuous, you actually cannot go to the black market. If you're less virtuous, you cannot work on the cathedral.
Yep.
You have to like own your role almost. Raiders had something similar with like the Valkyrie track.
Yeah.
I feel like, I think that was mostly just an upward track, was it not? You just kind of gain by doing. Yeah. Like this, having the give and take. Like there's actually some benefit to losing.
That's what I was.
Yeah,
and that's what I like about the virtue track is that for me personally, when I played this, when we did our gameplay, I was pretty much the entire game low on the virtue track, and
you hate taxes.
Well, yeah, but that also helped me out because even in the end I lost points because of it, but I was pretty much avoided taxes throughout the whole game.
Yeah, I mean it's because like the easiest way to gain virtue is generally by working on the cathedral. You'll get some typically from these like special cards every time. Yeah. So it's a hard hole to dig yourself out of. The only other really way is to go to the king's storehouse and given your
and there are some apprentice cards.
And building.
There's little ways to do it,
but like the quickest probably way is that. And
so in my experiences with the game, while the virtue track is quite brilliant, I would say that there are fewer advantages to being bad than good. Now, I know that with bad... No. Hear me out. So, like, yes, you have to pay fewer coins, right? The lower you go, the less taxes you have to pay.
Yep.
But I found that in this game, at least for me, collecting silver has never been too difficult. There's a location you can go to, and you get 2 immediately when you go there, even for your first time. The tax stand, it hurts, but it only drops you 2. You can go there probably at least once a game and still recover. You never did, but I'm saying there are ways to get silver in this game, delivering prisoners. I just don't think that the benefit of paying fewer taxes outweighs the benefit of getting the victory points at the end of the game, especially since you lose a considerable amount.
Counterpoint. If you are being less virtuous, it's more likely you're going to end up with a debt, and you're going to need coin to pay off a debt.
That's true. Okay, yeah, it's balanced. I'm not saying it isn't balanced, but I'm just saying personal experience. I just think that having the victory points towards the end of the game is going to be more important. And not only that,
I would say the victory points are really the only bonus to being virtuous.
Yeah.
Honestly, because like not being able to go to the black market is not necessarily that great, considering what you could get from the black market at any time.
True.
And being able to pay off a debt if you get above 14. I mean, that's almost not going to come into play most times. You might have a debt if you get really unlucky with the prison. But generally speaking, if you're being virtuous, the debt's not going to be coming your way most of the time anyway. So, and even getting to 15 is not that easy, unless you're really focused on it. So I don't really know that I agree, but
yeah, I mean, I understand what Will is saying. There is
Will, being a less virtuous person, would have liked more reward for being a bad person.
But even though you guys mentioned there's only a few ways to get virtue, it's still not expensive to get virtue and gain virtue. Like the King's Storehouse, it's 2 resources total to gain 1 virtue. And so it's pretty easy to control your spot, I think, on the virtue
that's a lot.
track.
I mean, it isn't expensive necessarily, but to use an entire turn and to give up 2 resources just to get 1 virtue, I feel like that's...
but it's so if you have multiple... Because it's... And I forget if this is, multiple actions per guy here. Could you pay off multiple? You could use multiple resources to.
True, but again, you're using
a turn, but you're using. That's why if you focus on getting throughout the game a couple guys at the King's Storehouse, and at the end you can start paying off.
I think that the mechanic makes absolute sense. Like you, if you're a bad guy, you're taking on more risk, and then the risk is that you'll put yourself in a position where at the end of the game you're losing 7, 8, 9 victory points, and that's almost impossible to overcome. Generally, at least in our experience. So I think thematically it makes sense. I'm just saying that the more that we play this game, I think the more we're going to all skew towards being virtuous because it helps to get every last bit.
I don't know. I think it's just a matter of not being too unvirtuous. Is that the word? I don't. Whatever it is. I don't know.
Disinvirtuous.
Disin-avirtuous. If you just keep it towards the middle, I think if you can stay in that 6 to 9 range, you can still probably win pretty easily.
Yeah, as long as you stay on the negative.
Now, we should probably just run through a few things pretty quickly. We don't need to discuss everything at length. The downtime in this game is very minimal, most of the time at least. It definitely. There's still a tension, I feel. Like when it's not your turn, even though there's very little downtime, when you aren't going and you're sort of working on a strategy, it's definitely you feel. I personally felt it at least, like an anxiety to I need.
Well, I think what happens
is
exactly. I think what happens is you're kind of, because it moves really quickly and there's not a lot of. In a typical resource management game, like we just mentioned, there's maybe only one person that can go to a spot, or it costs more to go to something like that. In this, people aren't really ruining your strategy too much, so you kind of know. I know.
That's
but
the word.
In a typical resource, that can happen every single turn. You can be like, oh shoot, they went to the whatever, the forest or whatever. So you know what you want to do, you go, and it allows you to kind of sit and observe what other people are doing, and I think that's where that tension comes from, is it gives you more time.
There's a very finite amount of time in this game. There's a set amount of turns, well, not that amount of turns, but you can see exactly how much longer you will have on the guild hall, and you never know. You might have a situation where someone throws a bunch of people in the guardhouse, or the jail, and then there's a black market reset. You find yourself suddenly dead. And
plus there's the timer in the box that after 90 minutes starts to slowly release chlorine gas into the room.
True.
So that was a clever mechanic.
That must have cost them a lot.
Sorry, mechanism.
Really forces you to speed the game up.
Yeah, it really does. Graham, you made a good point where, because in classic turn-based worker placement games,
it is turn-based.
There's always rounds, and people might go. There's always like a race to get to that one spot, and someone goes there, and you have to be like, crap, they went to the spot I wanted to go to. So you have to almost
in
take
situations
the time
where
to.
There are limits on who can do where. In this game, there's very few limits.
Yeah. So it keeps it moving because you're like, oh well, they went to the silversmith. Well, I'll go to the silversmith. Doesn't matter.
They can go to the town center. I'm fine. I don't care. Do what you want to do.
You mentioned the anxiety of how quick it moves, and I think that can sometimes be to the game's detriment, in the sense that when everyone's moving fast, there's almost like it puts like an impetus on everyone to also go fast, and I feel like sometimes, not that I'm not saying I ever made a move I didn't want to make, but I could see how, I know at least once I went to the guardhouse and I had like 2 or 3 guys there, but I forgot I could take 1 action per, because it was almost like, or it may not have even been a situation where I forgot. Like I did 1 action, and then almost the flow of the game continued to stream over to you, and then you did yours before I could even realize that I forgot to do 2 more actions, that at least I had a possibility of doing 2.
I get what you're saying about the, how it can be a detriment, but ultimately I think it's
on you.
I mean, you gotta, if you're not taking the time to think about your moves and you make a mistake, that's kind of the player's fault. But I understand what you're saying. I think another great benefit of, having no limits to who can go, for most spots on the board, having no limits in the fast-paced play, is it also kind of helps you develop a grand strategy of what you want to do. A lot of times in games, you have your idea, you have what you want to do, but little things make you change it really throughout the game. In this game, I felt like I had my strategy, I stuck with it, and I kind of just went with that throughout the whole game. And there's so many different strategies that you can do in this game that, and so and that's what I really like that. Like for instance, he was focusing on Cathedral. I was focusing on buildings. You kind of had a little bit of mixture of both. It seemed like you had cards that helped if you had resources and collected resources. So that's one thing I think,
it was really close at the end.
It was. All the strategies worked. It wasn't like one was clearly better than the other.
Yeah, I had no idea who was going to win, honestly.
Yeah.
Will asked me, Mario Party style, who would win. I said Graham, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Graham was a point away, though. That's how close it was.
Yeah, and you were 2 points away, I think, right? Or
three.
Yeah. But still, that's not, I mean...
one play.
Some other resource management games, there tends to really only be 1, maybe 2 viable strategies, I feel like, that work, and everybody's kind of fighting over those, But so I really appreciated about this game, and I think that helps because of the worker placement, how there's no limits to a lot of these spots. So that really helps, one, with the pacing, and it helps really develop a good strategy and for you to stick with it.
What do you guys think about the cards? The apprentice cards, the building cards. I feel like Will and I might have opposite opinions here. I'm just curious. I personally, I prefer the building cards to the apprentice cards in this game.
In what way?
I think they are both more interesting, more varied. They get you better rewards. They're cheaper in some senses. Like the workshop, to collect an apprentice, you have to pay 4 silver just to hire a single person. And I just felt like for what you get for most of them, it's kind of it wasn't quite worth the price.
I don't know, I sort of get the price though.
Like I only hired 1 the entire game, and it really didn't help me.
You need their symbols almost always to build buildings, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you need to pay to hire a worker in real life to build a building. Right? You're an architect. You need the apprentices to actually do the building for you.
Once again, I think this is where the game comes out very well balanced, because D didn't really need the apprentice cards because he was going for the cathedral, while someone like me, I needed the apprentice cards because I was going for buildings, and I didn't care about virtue, and it was easy to get my apprentice cards by just going to the black market.
Yeah, that's true. You could do that, but yeah, I don't know.
So that cheapens the...
My main issue was, I mean, yeah, I guess they help
We're
you
just
build
talking about the
buildings.
price, yeah.
But not even just the price, also, I still think, in general, I found them kind of underwhelming. Like, there's not a huge variety. I actually looked it up. There's only like 18 different kinds. And
Only 18.
compared to the building
board game
part,
designers out there
even
are
more
going-
compared to what I'm used to for like Raiders, where I felt like there were more, and they were at least more
That's
functional.
fair.
Like Niz, it's a lot of times it's like, oh, collect one extra thing when you go somewhere, as opposed.
And
to...
maybe,
You're most likely gonna forget you have it too. Like it's because the game moves so quick.
yeah, but they're not. The benefits usually aren't active benefits. They're not trying to use. While in Raiders they were. You were actively saying, I'm using my apprentice. I forget what they were called in Raiders. Your clan card, whatever it was. But I don't. Yeah, not.
I don't know.
I forget what they were called, but.
Your bros.
Here they were necessary for buildings, but I think it thematically made sense. They should be there. Whether or not they need to have more benefits, I think that really depends on...
And I think that's all Dee's really saying. Is that he understands why they're there. He doesn't agree with the price. We can disagree on that. But I do agree with him on the general sentiment that they were underwhelming.
Yeah, I wasn't excited when a new one came out. I was like, oh, what could it be? Oh,
yeah. Sometimes in those games, you're like, oh, what does this worker do?
As opposed to...
Oh, he summons the dragon. Well, I guess in this game, it's grounded in reality.
As opposed to the buildings, which there's a much greater variety on those. I checked that as well. There's 40 different kinds of building cards you could get. And I feel like the rewards and the points, and I just like they're way more exciting. I do have an issue with all the cards in the game, which is that I don't love the iconography on them. I found it kind of confusing. The fact that this needs to exist, I don't love.
Yeah, just write in text. There was room on the card.
It is an example of going for form over function, I think. Like it looks better if you have a bunch of like symbols and stuff as opposed to written out exactly what everything means. But like if you need this much explanation, well, this is different stuff, but like for everything, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's annoying having to go back and constantly reference it and like look up like, okay, what is my card?
Especially in a game that moves like this. I remember there was a moment where I was like, what the hell does the fortress do? I can't find the fortress, and I still can't.
It's in there.
It's right here. Yeah. But it's like it's in a thing. I don't know. I get what you're saying. I agree with you on that point.
A lot of them make sense, but some of them I would look at it and I was like, I don't know what to make of this. Any final thoughts before we sort of give our scores?
It is brilliant. I sort of wish we had designed it because it's kind of one of those games where you play it and you're like, how did they do this?
Yeah, it's very well thought out.
I did have one extra thought that came to me regarding the psychology of the game. Not even but how it affects you. I think having the thing where you earn resources per worker is really cool as compared to just gaining something every time you go. Yeah. Like the cumulative effect really feels nice. So that like the third time you go there, like, oh, I've got 6 of them all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like or even maybe more if you're going for clay or whatever that is. It's very rewarding.
Yeah.
I agree.
It makes your goals feel attainable quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas in a lot of worker placement games, you're like, all right, I can get to this building in like
8 turns.
12 turns.
Yeah.
You got to do this. No.
And you're just
This is like, I can get there quick and then move on.
Yeah. I need 4 wood. I can get that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So we're giving our scores. We're doing our traditional system, our unique...
All right. Part of me doesn't want to do scores anymore, but...
I think we should do scores.
We can do scores.
Scores are fun.
I just want to make it clear to you guys in the audience, and gals, these scores are very arbitrary. Take our words before the score, and this is just like we're doing our best job to sort of summarize our feelings into a gesture or a letter grade or a number grade.
Yeah, if you ever read our written reviews on our website, we had 3 different grading systems.
Yeah. You were stars.
I used stars.
I used the thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, Will uses letter
I do letter grades.
So how are we doing this? Who's going first?
I feel like it should just go D, Graham. Will.
Right,
that's how it was originally.
I was on a 5-star scale. I'm going to give this 4.5 stars out of 5.
I think the game is fantastic. Dee just said it before. I wish I would have designed this game. It's a lot of fun.
Will said that. I would never say
that. Sorry. Will said...
I only designed 5-star games.
I get you two confused. You're so just...
What's your thumb, Graham?
2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up from Graham.
2 thumbs up.
And Will, what's your letter, Will?
I'm going to be giving this an A.
An A. Do you have an A plus in your system, or is it A the highest?
You know, I haven't decided yet. That's why I usually settle on A's.
Okay.
Again, this is an arbitrary score.
Totally arbitrary. Just means that we really like the game.
We all really like this one.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun
honestly,
playing
one of the better games we've played, I think, on Board Crazy. All right. Anyway, I think that's just going to do it for this review for this week. Sorry it came out late. Again, it was later than expected. Will got sick. How dare he? Who gets sick? Anyway, our next review should be out hopefully on the time we're aiming for, which should be around Wednesday for the next game we play. So check that out, and of course, come back this Friday. Come back every Friday for our usual Board Crazy Plays videos. So again, thank you for watching this first ever review. I'm D.
I'm Graham.
I'm Will.
Hey.
Please subscribe and hit that notification button.
Like, comment, subscribe, notification, share,
social media,
all the normal stuff.
Links to our Architects of the West Kingdom gameplay video are down there if you want to go watch that.
Please do.
If you haven't already.
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
And thank you for watching.
Toodaloo.